What's up, Tim?
What's going on, sir?
Not too much. Kevin, David, everybody else. Now I can't read everybody's name. Too many names. Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Tim, how's the biz treating you?
The biz is bizzin'.
The biz is bizzing. Guess we can take that. Take that as
Just
a
keep
win.
grinding and keep grinding away.
What would you say is the biggest thing you've learned over the last month?
Uh, I would say consistency, which I am definitely not doing the best at, but it is proven across the board that if you just keep doing stuff, eyes will fall on it. Because I've already had a few people reach out to stuff of things I've done way in the past, and if you just keep putting more stuff that's more current, you can only expect more in the future.
Yeah, kind of the database thing, right?
Exactly.
Like I'm always thinking about new stuff, and then right when I am obsessing over it, then I get something from like think a thing that's a year old or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's unfortunate. A lot of the stuff that people were actually commenting on, there's still like a lot of things that I'm personally not comfortable with, like all and buyer stuff still, but it's still the fact that it's still providing some sort of traction is that it means that it is working. It's just not the right people. And so that's more of my focus is tailoring it towards the people that I want.
Right. Love it, dude. Love it. Daniel's at work. Matisse also at work. All good. You guys can still hang. I think we got a good one on our hands tonight for you guys. I switched it up a little bit this week. We can still do some Q's and A's and anything else you guys want to talk about, but I'm always trying to find the newest and best interesting thing that can be helpful to the most amount of people. And if and when I find it, I try to get into it. Anybody in here in Florida right now? In Tampa? I'm sure some people are. Who's in Tampa? Or was in Tampa, I guess, if you're running away from the storm. Oh, did they all have to evacuate? Maybe they evacuated.
I think I saw Travis. Travis, are you in Florida? I saw your hand
Travis?
go up.
Yeah, Travis is in Orlando, but you're
Oh,
decently inland, but I'm sure you're in the path, right, Travis? My house
Yeah,
is
I'm in the
right
path.
here.
I'm like almost in the direct path, but
geez.
it by the time it gets to us, it should be okay.
Yeah, that's usually how it works. However, you never know.
Yeah, we might get like 100-mile-an-hour winds, but I think
You're in
the
a,
worst that we're is like our roof might get taken. But
you guys are in a rental property, right?
no, we have a townhouse.
You own a townhouse.
Yeah,
Okay. At least it's a townhouse, though. I feel like that's way better, like structurally.
yeah. So
Like,
it's brick. We don't have any
yeah,
updraft that can take us. Like we're pretty safe.
yeah. I'm,
Only
I'm,
thing we might
stoked-
have is power go out for a few days.
yeah. I'm definitely stoked to not own a house on the West Coast right now. We've got our house in Jacksonville, but I hope it will be all right. We'll see. How's everybody else doing? Sean and I did a deal today, funded a EMD today. Dakota, if Dakota's in here, him and I funded a big EMD deal today. I think we funded at least 3 deals today. Got some people involved. What time is it? We'll give it a couple more minutes, but I've got a couple things for you guys to kick it off. There's a couple questions in the group that we'll jump to at some point too. My goal for tonight, some of you guys may have already seen it, but I kind of want to just do the elongated version, the more, family style, fund wise style version of talking about what I put in the free group that unlocks at level 5, which was my kind of my lead gen secrets thing that I put together, the rule of 300, as I titled it. That comes basically straight from Hormozi, but kind of with my twists and relevance to our business. But I think it's very, very relevant for all of us. But I want to kick off with a couple things, just to get us rocking and rolling as we're waiting for people to jump in. First one is if you guys are accessible, for example, Dennis, who is currently driving, should not be typing. But for those of you that are not driving, put a 1 in the chat if you have done lead generation today. I'm going to leave it that vague. Just lead generation, any type of lead generation. Kevin has Bert, Sean, Heather, Brenda, Nina, Dustin, Reese, Mary, Tim, Freddie. Russ, awesome. Calvert, perfect. So I never know. Jamie posted a video. David, awesome. I never know how to ask the questions. I figured I'd ask it that way instead of the scarier version, but we'll put it this way. If you guys are in here, and here, actually, I'll ask this question because who knows, maybe one of you will be bold and that would be great. I'm not going to make you do anything. But if you guys are in here and you didn't put a 1 in the chat, I would love to know why you haven't done lead generation. Is it that you feel like you don't have time? Is it that you forgot? Were you unmotivated? If is anybody that has not done lead generation today willing to answer that question? It's okay if you're not.
I will, Ryan.
Hi, Darlene.
Hi. Part of my thing is we're getting ready to transition and I'm going to be out of town, so I've got very limited time. So I have been working on really trying to get my Instagram posting going. And so I've been focusing my energy on that, trying to get like 30 days worth of posts because I know I'm not going to have time in the next month to do much of that. So I interpreted your 100 days, 100 minutes, 100 outreaches to 100 minutes. So I've been spending a lot of time. As you know, I always have technical issues. So I haven't actually got anything published today, even though I have been working on this for a week. So that's really more my issue, and I'm hoping to have that solved this week so that I'm consistent. Then I can try to focus on doing some, other outreach. I'd like to be able to do a bit of everything. I don't want to just do one thing.
Yeah. Well, that is, I mean, that is lead generation.
Yeah.
Even if it's not active, you were doing lead generation if you're working on the social media. I mean, even if you're not posting and you're just researching and planning, like that's all part of lead generation, right?
Okay.
I think my objective is just trying to understand. I mean, you guys know I'm always trying to understand better of what's holding people up from just doing something. Because if you and like Daniel just put in the chat, he's been at work all day and he's driving home now. Totally get that. You do your work at night. Totally get it. But I'm just trying to understand for people that haven't done anything today, or I guess maybe the better question would have been like aren't planning to do anything today. I know it's 8 o'clock on the East Coast, so it's already getting pretty late. I just want to know. I always want to get feedback from people. So, and I see you, Tyler, and Daniel, and I think one other person had said something. But for those of you guys that are just getting started, totally get it. You are in like the only window where I feel it is acceptable not to generate leads because you're just in the learning phase. We just want to cut that learning phase as short as possible, but you guys just jumped in, so stay following that track. It'll work out, and you'll start getting into the lead gen. But that's really the discussion tonight, and always, right? You guys know we're always talking about lead generation, what we can do better, how we can find more deals, and that's what I'm actively working on. I've told you guys many times now, I've got 3 different things that are coming for you. They're all taking longer than I would have liked. They're all getting delayed. Welcome to the world. I work on them every day with a few other people that are helping, and we're waiting on things to clear, this, that, and the other, but it's all coming. So we'll get more out there to help with the lead generation, but I think tonight will really help with that as well. So I think what we'll do is I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we'll just kind of do we'll go interactive mode here, and you guys can unmute at any time if you want. But I'm going to show you guys. So if you go into the classroom and you go to phase 3, classroom got a slight revamp today. I don't know if people like this or dislike it. I just wanted to make it more simple and clear. So if we go into the leads section in phase 3 and you go to the rule of 100 and you click where to start, that's where what we're going to talk about tonight is. If you're not in phase 3 and you're still in phase 2, you can get through phase 2 pretty quickly if you want to. No rush. This will be here when you get there. But the objective that I'm going to talk about tonight is, like I said, I'm just going to be working through this. Some of you guys have already seen the video that I made on it inside of the free community, but I want to work through it interactively with you guys and just talk about the concepts that are here. Because the whole point of this is starting at the beginning, which is valid for almost all of you. And I'll actually read kind of the scenarios where it's not, but we're going to talk about this in the context of Facebook primarily. Instagram and other things will fall into play here as well. But the whole point of this is, I think, a reframe that Hormozi gave me on content when it comes to being a beginner, right? And having that least path of resistance. So we'll start it off with the quote right here. Content and warm outreach alone can build a 6- and 7-figure business. What does that mean? It means that without doing cold outreach, it doesn't mean you can't, but without doing cold outreach and without running paid ads, you can build $1 million business. And I've seen that to be the case, because up until 2 weeks ago, that was the only two things I did, was content and warm outreach, right? So very, very powerful things. Now the intro to this is that if you have other traffic sources that are working, right? So if you guys are getting lead generation, maybe I've seen some of you guys that are like agents or things like that, and you're getting leads that way. Perfect. Keep doing what you're doing. This is for people who are, we'll call it, struggling or are new to getting leads, to talk about the best possible way to get into it. It'll apply to all of you guys. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is content, but I'm going to break that down a little bit more. Darlene was just talking about it. You guys know we talk about it a lot. It's how I get all of my leads. It's the most powerful thing, in my opinion, you can do to build your business, but content is a very vague term, right? And I want to break it down a little bit. So here's the steps. You guys can write this down. This should be recording, I believe. It says it's recording. So you guys can write this down. It'll be recorded. You can go through this later, whatever you want. But these are the steps that I would take if I was you guys and you're getting started. And the cool thing is, no matter what position you're in, you can follow these steps. And some of you might speed them up a ton. Some of you might slow them down a ton. That's great. Doesn't matter. So the first step, pick one place that your avatar, now most of you guys hopefully have filled out the avatar worksheet. That's in phase 2, right? Maybe you've changed it around a little bit. I know I have plenty of times. Pick one place where your avatar hangs out online. Now, right off the bat, does anybody want to just unmute maybe and just throw a couple things at me on where your avatar hangs out online, or where you think they hang out?
I think they're hanging out on Facebook and LinkedIn. I need data to back that up.
Well, you can't back anything up with data until you have a hypothesis. So that's a great start. I like it. Anybody else? Any thoughts?
I would say Instagram.
I would say for me, ditto.
IG. Trinice said IG as well. I think Bert said IG. Cool. So exactly what Russ said, I love, right? Get data to back it up, but just come up with a hypothesis and test it out. That is always the best thing to do. Now, the reality is different people are in different places. So here's kind of I'll give a high level. So Russ, I love the concept of LinkedIn, and I'll answer this question by handing it off. Somebody asked me how my LinkedIn stuff was going. I'll give the honest answer. I have not once been on my LinkedIn. Haley's been doing that. So Haley, how has it been going? Have people been interacting or adding us, or I don't know, has that been working at all?
LinkedIn is harder because you have to connect with someone in order to message. So that has been the slowest part of it. I actually subscribed to something that I'm testing out so I can share if it's working for you guys. It's called Dripify, which automatically connects with a certain group of people that you want to connect with. So I put a filter of sub 2 and then a filter of Gator lending. So it's cool because you can, I guess, do that and have something automatic go in the background, but not a lot of people are accepting the connection or responding to the message. So it's definitely a little slower, but I'm still trying to figure it out.
Are you posting?
Interesting. Go ahead, David.
Are you posting? That's what I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, David. What was your question?
Well, a part of the whole LinkedIn thing is you see people posting stuff. I mean, either their company's posting something or the person individually is posting something. And so, you do generate from some traffic from that, especially if you are, classifying what kind of a business you have or things of that nature, right?
Mhm.
So your profile needs to reflect either your profile or the business profile needs to reflect what you do and the who you service, I guess would be the best way to do that.
Yeah,
Both of them
definitely.
probably be. So
Yeah. And I've seen too that LinkedIn has groups similar to Facebook where you can go in and like look at real estate investing groups.
right.
I've tried posting in there. I mean, I'll take lessons from you if you have lessons. It's definitely we're definitely learning. So haven't figured it out just yet.
No, and that's just it's like anything else, right? I mean, Facebook, you're going to be posting to a lot of groups hoping to generate traffic and credibility. LinkedIn is very similar. But the one thing I think that will help drive traffic for you potentially is not only just the credibility you guys have from doing it already, but also linking. So finding relevant articles regarding wholesaling, transactional lending, or anything like that, and reposting those and commenting on those or offering suggestions.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Okay, so just my ideas.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing that I was going to touch on with LinkedIn, Russ, and everybody is that this is where, like, when I say pick one place where your avatar hangs out, I'm not saying this like passively. Like, really dig into this, right? Because the reality is most of us here, I assume, I'm making an assumption here. Everybody might be slightly different on their objectives or on their ideas, but most of us here are targeting wholesalers in some form or fashion. And I will say, I can't use the word factually, but in my experience, LinkedIn is not the place wholesalers spend time. Now, some of them might, but we're trying to look at majorities here, right? And the majority of wholesalers, a wholesale business is not a LinkedIn type business, right? It's not a business with a name that you talk about to people. It's like a random LLC that hopefully doesn't get in trouble for wholesaling, right? It's like a very different vibe from LinkedIn. So the reason Haley and I are testing out the LinkedIn is really just because it is that professional thing long term if you want to build and grow a business and have that established. And whenever I notice that, I like to try and get started early, right? So like if I think I'm going to need a LinkedIn 5 years from now, then I'll start it now so that it can be grown by the time I actually want to use it. But just take note of that. So like if I was trying to structure and find people and do step one, right? Pick a place where my avatar hangs out. And keep in mind, and I'm probably skipping ahead of myself here, but pick a place to start. Don't pick 10 places, pick a place. So make that hypothesis. Don't worry about if it's right or not. Just make a hypothesis and then dig in on that. And then you can alter that decision and hypothesis based on what you actually find. So pick the place you think you are most likely to get in front of the most amount of people, because people are everywhere, right? I mean, you can find people deep in like a Reddit thread for sure, but the question is that going to be your most potent audience? If you're already creating content, like I said, and you guys are generating leads, I know we have some people in here that have other lead channels. Maybe they've got a wholesale business up and running or things like that. If you're already generating leads, then keep doing what you're doing, right? We never reinvent the wheel, but it's for those of you that aren't. Groups, of course, are heavily underrated. So that's the other thing, right? Anything, and this is a lot of what we're going to touch on tonight, is that it takes less skill to get attention of a group on a platform than it does to try and create your own group, right? So when you talk about, again, something like posting on LinkedIn, all we talk about and argue about is the algorithm, getting that reach, right? Getting impressions, getting people to see stuff. When you eliminate that and go inside of groups, it's like you take all of that work and you just snap your fingers and it's there, right? That's how groups work. That's how communities work. As long as it's a focused community, it's harder if you like, I don't know, if it's one of those huge Facebook pages that's like Wholesale America or something, it might be a little bit too vague. But like, I mean, frankly speaking, if somebody wanted to target transactional lenders, going into FundWise, especially the free community, there's like 3,000 people in there, right? It's a pretty target audience. Like we only teach transactional lending. So everyone in there has some sort of a connection or interest in transactional lending. So that's step one, right? The platforms, we talked about that. The opportunities, I know a few people are doing this, but don't forget Skool communities other than ours exist. I know a lot of people are probably new to the platform here, and Skool isn't huge yet. It will be. It has, I think, like tripled or quadrupled in size in the last 8 months or 10 months, I think. So it's growing very, very quickly. There are other big wholesale groups on Skool. There's not a lot yet. There will be, but that's one place. LinkedIn, like we've been talking about, LinkedIn also has groups apparently. Haley's been joining a few of them. I didn't really know they had that. Again, it's still probably not the primary. Facebook, you guys know, is my go-to that we'll talk about tonight, and then the Reddit forums. What's up, David?
I would just say that Skool is a little, I mean, it's not exactly like Facebook, and I don't want to classify it that way, because you guys know how I feel about Facebook. But you have to be careful. So you can sign up for free groups on the wholesale side of things. You just need to be careful about reading the rules for the group and not transgressing against those. And even if you read the rules and you don't necessarily transgress, they could still kick you out, and they don't have to justify anything. That's kind of a problem. So some of them don't say, no self-promotion or anything of that nature. I've made requests in a couple of places, and the complication as well is if they have more than one admin. I had a group that I joined, and one of the admins said yes, I could post, and the other admin said categorically you can't, and he kicked me out of the group before I even had finished the post. So you just have to be really aware that, take the chance. Yeah, it's fine, because there's plenty of other groups out there, but don't be hurt if someone says, yeah, you're canceled.
Yeah. Well, and so that's actually basically going to be my primary discussion tonight, David, is exactly that, or a derivative of that, which is step two that I want to talk about with you guys. And this is kind of it's not groundbreaking, but I don't believe it is what pretty much everybody in here is doing. But I think a lot more people can benefit heavily from doing this. Now, the reason this isn't talked about is because this is the hard way. What I'm going to talk about tonight is the hard way, but I also believe it is the more effective way. And what really drew my attention to this is that when Hormozi was breaking all of this down, this is what I did. And I just didn't really have it quantified. That's the post I made today or yesterday or whenever I did about this. So the second step, so everybody, hopefully at least mentally, if you haven't written it down, you've given yourself a location, right? A Facebook group, a Skool group, whatever it is, a location where your avatar is, where the people are that you are trying to reach. And you can start with one and you can go to another. It's totally fine, but focus on one thing first. If you don't have an audience, which is 99% of the people in here, I think, including myself, start with comments. And this is the big thing that I think has been lacking, because it's the slower route in your head. It feels like the slower route, right? So once you've picked a platform, follow the influencers that your target audience is following and engage on their content. That's the first thing. I used to do this to a T. Now, this isn't going to generate you guys leads, but just as an easy equivalent in FunWise, it's when I post in FunWise and then you comment about whatever the post is, right? This is what I learned, or this is what I got out of it, or whatever. And then, maybe if David comments on it, and then we have somebody that just jumped into the community super recently, and they see his comment, then they're like, oh, David's the expert, right? You guys have heard me talk about this before. So do that first, right? Start commenting on posts. Here's some fun tips that you can try, is like turning on notifications if you want to be the first person. This is different on Facebook versus Skool. Some of you guys may have noticed on Skool, there's no algorithms, which is what's really, really cool. So whoever comments first on a post is always first, which means every single person that clicks on a post will see your name first. Every single person. That's how it works, which is really interesting. If you start with comments, then you don't have to rely on the algorithm, right? That's kind of the big thing I want to push to you guys tonight, is that if you're just getting started making content, which is what we've been talking about, which by the way, I'm not suggesting that you stop doing. I want to kind of mesh in this concept in your brains that when you're making content, it's going to suck always when you're starting. It's going to be really hard to get people to see it. Your hooks aren't going to be as good as you want them to be. you're probably going to watch your content and say, I wouldn't watch that, right? Like I always do, and then be like, oh, now I'm bummed out because my content's not good. But you got to go do that 1,000 times to make it good anyways. But in the meantime, while you're trying to fight the algorithm and your stuff isn't good enough, you can start writing comments. I say write 100 comments per day minimum. You don't have to do 100 if you can't do 100. But the point is, start commenting over posting. So the analogy I'll give, or the comparison here is, David, you were talking about the groups, right? If you go into a new group and you don't post for a while, like I'm talking a while, at least a month. I mean, I don't have an exact timeline, but give it enough time to where you have established yourself in the comment section as somebody who provides value and talks about a lot of stuff that is helpful to people, and you know things, and you know you're an expert, or at least an expert in your field, whatever it is. People notice that, right? And then the kicker is make your comments better than anybody else's comments. That's the kicker. That's where I think people get lost. And this conversation happens a lot on Skool, where people will make a bunch of comments, but the comments are just like, I agree, or great thought, and they don't actually do anything. And then you'll find those comments that are truly thought out, that are like, this is what I learned, or this is how I can help other people, or whatever it may be. And if you just spend that extra 5 minutes on your comments, and you do that over an extended period of time, and you make that a part of your habit, everything else that we'll talk about becomes 10 times easier, because people recognize your name. People know who you are. You're adding value first. And then instead of jumping into a group and immediately being like, hey, I want to post this thing, right? I promise it'll be valuable, or whatever. Prove it first. Prove it through your actions. And we'll get into it, but if you start with that comment method, I promise it makes things easier. So for example, on Facebook, I did this for a year, not fully intentionally the way I'm talking about it now, but it's just what I did. And I can tell you guys, I can show you the messages. When I make posts now, I post sometimes a little bit edgier stuff, and I get it. I don't get it taken down, and I get it posted because I talk with the admins and owners of the group directly beforehand, because I've been doing this for a long time now, and I have a track record of providing value to people. And so I can check in with them and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. And they'll say, usually we wouldn't allow it, but for you, we'll allow it, right? Anybody can do that. It just takes time. They don't know, if you just come in and you try to sell something, obviously that's not going to work out. But if you give yourself that runway to provide value first, that is a very recognizable thing. So recap, find where your people are and just start commenting. Just become a part of that community, right? And you can focus this in. Don't do it in a million different places. Just do it in one or two, right? A few places. That's all you need to do. Once you're in the habit of commenting, then you can start making more posts. But only then, right? So, we talk about here, like, spend 100 minutes per day creating posts. If you're able to do both of these, I would just double up on this at the start and just keep providing value. We've had some people that in our community have gone ham on this, like Freddie and Darlene, right? Sean, David, some of those people that just comment on a lot of stuff. That's their way of providing value and letting you guys know they know what they're talking about. They've been here for a bit. They're actually working hard, all of those things. So that's the second step. And then moving into the third, this is when you start building that habit of post. So one of the main things I wanted to hit on tonight for you guys was kind of inserting this piece in between finding your niche and posting. And it's just the commenting. It's like the cold outreach version of content, I would say. So when we're doing outreach, everybody knows cold outreach is the easiest way to get started. It's also the lowest leverage, right? But it's really easy. You can just go do it. That's what commenting is. Those of you since the viral challenge that have started, like Darlene was saying, started trying to plan stuff out, trying to figure it out, like, it is hard. It's what I do all day. I try and figure out, how do I post stuff that's actually helpful to people? And then I spend forever on it, and then I post it, and I hate it. It happens every single time. But that takes a ton of time and effort and planning, right? Writing a thoughtful comment is not pre-planned. It's just reactive. So it's way easier. You don't have to come up. You don't have to create your own content. Your content is basically just feeding off of other people's content. Somebody asks a question, you answer it. Somebody makes a post, you provide feedback. It's that simple. Now, cadence-wise, once you start posting, you want to get that consistency going, which is what I talk about here. But again, this step doesn't even come until after you get the commenting down. Then we get into the profile improvement, right? Which you guys hopefully have all seen me talk about, and I talk about more in depth inside of phase 3, where if you are commenting enough to where people know who you are, and then you start posting, people are going to start looking at your stuff, which means you need to have an improved profile. I'm not going to go into depth on this tonight, but when you send people somewhere, make sure you're sending them the place you want them to go, right? We'll leave it at that. And then we get into the outreach stuff. This isn't as crazy, but I want to read through this with you guys live as well and just talk about creating high quality content, because this is feedback that has been very helpful to me. And so I wanted to go through it with you guys as well. So when you're thinking about posting on Facebook, when you're thinking about your Instagram, Darlene, or any of you guys that have actually started trying to plan out YouTube and are learning how dang difficult it is, understand this: content is valuable if it saves people time. I want you guys to really, really think about what I just said, because I think this has been probably the most influential thing in what I have been doing with my content and generating leads online in general. If you spend 10 months learning something, and then you take what you learned and you put it into a 10-minute video, that is incredibly valuable, right? If you take 10 days learning something and put it into a 10-second video, that's incredibly valuable. The point is, the value comes in saving people time. So if somebody could go learn for themselves and get more progress than they can reading your super wordy Facebook post that doesn't really have any value in it, that's where the value equation goes to die, right? But if there was here's an easy example, right? I posted Patrice's masterclass training that we did the other day on Thursday. And it was, I think we were on there for exactly an hour, right? Now, if somebody was in there and when I posted the replay of the training, went into our comment section, or maybe even made their own post and said, hey, I was in that hour-long thing. Here's the 3 most important things that you can get out of that training that you can utilize today to help improve your writing. Incredibly valuable, right? For those of you guys that didn't make it, you'd be like, oh, heck yeah. Somebody went through that entire hour when I didn't have the time, especially those of you guys that are like, yeah, I don't have a lot of free time. I got my W-2, whatever else. Instead of having to go through the training, they pulled out the top 3 things that I can go implement right now. This is perfect. That is how you create quality content. When we talk about posting in our community, this is the type of stuff that I'm trying to help you guys get more geared towards, right? So the example I like to use is for Lance. I reached out to 100 people every single day for 100 days straight. Here's the 3 things or the 10 things that you can say that will get you more responses, more deals, more whatever it is, right? And that's incredibly valuable, because 100 outreaches for 100 days is whatever that comes out to. 10,000 outreaches or 100,000? I think 10,000. Crazy, right? So he has just completely sped up the process for you by doing that. And it doesn't have to be future stuff either, right? Like Sean's value equation is he's been doing this stuff for 30 years, right? So if Sean can take lessons that he's learned over 30 years and put it together into, 30-second clips or whatever Sean's trying to do, that is incredibly valuable. He's taking stuff like, I'm not even 30 years old. So Sean's taken more than my lifetime worth of information and condensed it into something that I can take in. Now, will I learn as much as Sean did in the 30 years? No. But if I can get a lot of value out of that and not have to go through some of the things over those 30 years, that's valuable. Another example you guys have heard me use is that me creating FunWise, the objective was I lost 6 figures lending money. Now I'm going to come in and show you guys everything you can do to not repeat that process, right? Now we're talking about double value, because not only does it save you the time of going through that year or whatever that I spent losing the money, but it also saves you money. So it's double trouble. Very heavy value. So that's the first part of this. Become the most valuable person in the community. This is another huge one, right? I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, these are the top 5 most valuable people in FundWise. But when you go into other people's communities, if you become the most valuable person, you will have so much power to generate your leads. So much. Like, it's insane how much power you'll have. The simplest way to make high quality content is to just spend more time than everybody else does on stuff, right? This is such a powerful, powerful thought that I love to share all the time. Is you can tell when somebody spends those extra 10 seconds, especially on comments, which is what I wanted to push for you guys tonight when we're talking about commenting inside of Facebook groups. Don't be the person that just leaves, you know, a thumbs up or whatever. Be the person that takes 10 seconds to write something that's actually helpful. It's going to truly change the way that somebody sees whatever that situation is. Here's another one that you can burn into your brain. It's not seconds of value, it's value per second, right? This is one that I'm working a lot on. So when I'm hosting, and this is part of the reason why I try and do these trainings in like 30 minutes to an hour maximum, is because I'm not here to keep you guys for 6 hours and give you 10 minutes of actual value. I want to jump on these Zooms or trainings or whatever we're doing and just give you as much as I can in as little amount of time, because you're not here to spend a bunch of time. Nobody here just has unlimited time. We're here to get the information and then go implement it, right? It's not seconds of value, it's value per second. This is the same thing that Patrice was teaching us in copywriting and that I talk about when you're creating content on things like Facebook. Patrice said when she writes, she goes back through and she deletes everything that doesn't directly help whatever the situation is that they're talking about, right? So if I'm talking about how I made $30,000 on a lending deal, I'm probably not going to need to tell somebody about my entire 6-month lead up to the deal, right? Or if I do, I can condense that down into a few words and actually get to the valuable part, because that person didn't necessarily care about the 6 months. They just care about the specifics on how I got the deal, how I protected my money, and how I can go do it again. That's what they care about. Sharing your insights. Keep it dense, right? Provide more value than everybody else. Demonstrating your authority and credibility. We talked about this, I think, last week as well. I also just made a video about it that I'll post. One of the biggest things that people bring up to me is I don't know what to talk about because I don't have the authority or the credibility, meaning maybe you haven't made money yet. You haven't gotten your first deal. And so you feel like I don't have anything to talk about, right? The crazy thing about that, or the interesting thing I'll say about that, is that there's 2 types of things that are exceptional. The first is the actual achievement, right, of making money, which is what everybody wants to look for. That's the low-hanging fruit. That's the easy thing to talk about. And that should still be an objective, obviously, if that's your goal. That can still be your objective. But there's a second thing that everybody is missing when they talk about, oh, I haven't made money, I don't have things to talk about. And that's the effort that you put in to do something, right? So if I was to, I'll use the Lance example again. If Lance reaches out to 100 people a day for 100 days straight and does 10,000 outreaches, and the average person does 10 outreaches every other day, then it's going to take them, whatever that comes out to, 100 times as long to learn what Lance learned, right? They're also going to be like, how the heck did Lance do 100 days straight with that much effort, right? What were his systems like? How did he stay motivated? How did he keep that consistency? His credibility, aside from whether or not he made money, is the fact that he just did that thing that most people wouldn't do, right? And that's what a lot of you guys are missing, is that you don't have to make $1 million to have something of value to people, because you know what else people are missing other than just making $1 million is the ability to just start and not stop and focus and do something that takes a long time and build the systems. There's so many other things that people are looking for besides $1 million. In fact, a lot of people aren't even looking for $1 million. And so when you talk about demonstrating authority and credibility, if you haven't made money, if you don't have the credibility of that success metric, then use the other success metric, which is just putting in more effort than the normal human being would do, right? I'm sure I could go on forever just talking about how I work 16-hour days every day without any breaks and not bring it up the money at all. And people would still be like, okay, how do I do that? Right? Or how can I get those results or whatever it may be? So that's how you can demonstrate that. The best content, which I tell you guys all the time about your posts, right? You guys know no hypotheticals in here. The best type of content is I just did this thing. Here's what I learned. Everybody can do this kind of content. Every single person listening right now can do this kind of content. I just reached out to 100 people. Here's what I learned. I just set up my LLC. I just lost $10,000. I just fumbled the bag on my first deal. Here's what I learned, right? This is the art of doing things and then talking about it. It's the easiest type of thing. And the crazy part about it is that anybody can make $100,000 at some point, eventually. Anybody can do that, but not, and anybody can talk about doing that, right? There's a million different ways to make $100,000. But nobody can talk about what Jamie just did on his glamp site deal. Why? Because even if somebody else has done stuff for glamping, they're not Jamie. They didn't do what Jamie did. So it's so simple to talk about things in that manner. And this is why I'm always really trying to push for you guys that if you don't feel like you have anything to talk about, then you either just don't understand this concept or you're not doing anything. Because the people that get burnt out on trying to figure out what to talk about typically just aren't doing anything. That's where they get stuck. Because if you're doing stuff every day, you're going to have so much to talk about, it'll take forever. It's not even possible to get through it all. And then you got to figure out what's the most valuable out of that. So take note of this, all of you guys. I just did this thing. Here's what I learned. Take that, put it into your posts in FunWise. Put it into your posts on Facebook. And if you put together a piece of content that says, I just did this thing, here's what I learned, and you don't find it to be that valuable thing that's saving people time, right? That's giving high value per second, then it means you need to go do more of that thing and then come back. But you can always talk in that manner. That's there. Okay. The next big thing, I've been working on this a lot. Hopefully you guys will start to see more of it. When you are, this is for longer form stuff. This can be written or this can be things like YouTube. When you're starting long form content, proof, promise, plan is the absolute killer for content. What does proof, promise, plan look like? Well, it's basically in the name, but it's the structure with which you can write. It's the structure with which you can record videos, whether you're on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Skool, anything in between. So proof, I just did this thing, right? That's your proof. I just did this thing. I just made $1 million. I just reached out to 1,000 people. I just spent 100 days straight doing something. That's your proof, right? Your proof is a measurable thing. Remember, I always talk to you guys about, don't say it took me a little bit of time. Say it took 2 weeks, right? Measurable proof. The second thing in your content, and I'm going to do a lot more on this, by the way. So if you guys are taking notes, don't let your brain get too exploded here, because proof, promise, plan, I've been spending like the last year on, and I do not feel like I've gotten it down at all, but I'm working on it so that I can share it with you guys. Proof, what you did. Promise, how you're going to share what you did to other people, right? So for me, my proof might be I made $10,000 on a deal today, right? That's my proof. My promise is I'm going to show you guys how I did it. That's my promise to you. My plan is I'm going to do that by breaking down the top 3 things that I learned. Does that make sense? You talk about what you did. You tell people how you're going to share that with them. And then you break down exactly how you're going to do it. And then they know what's happening, right? And you can see here too, short form can take elements of that, but you don't have to do all 3 if you're shortening. So if I'm doing a 30-minute YouTube video, I'm always going to follow that structure. If you're doing a 30-second video, Darlene, you're not going to be able to do all of that. And usually what you're going to skip is you're going to skip the plan, and you're kind of just going to focus on the promise with maybe a little bit of proof, because you don't need to do a plan, because in the time you can explain your plan on a short form content style thing, you can just do the plan, right? So that's what you'd be skipping in that order. I've already said this. Do stuff, then talk about what you did, or talk about what happened. I reached out to 100 people and nobody responded. Anytime you speak with somebody, here's another great one. This is what I talk about with you guys about phone calls, about getting on the phone with people. Anytime you speak with somebody, there's a chance that your audience, your avatar, whoever it is you're talking to, can gain value from it, right? I'm sure some of you guys can think, I'm just going to throw some names out there, but like, I'm sure you guys have been on a call with Malcolm Turner and thought, I got some serious value out of that I could share with other people, right? Or Jamie Marcos or Lance, right? Some of these people that are getting on phone calls all the time with you guys, I am quite certain you have left those phone calls getting enough value that you could share it with other people. And if you had the time to get on the phone with them and somebody else didn't, then give them the value per second, right? Share what you learned. Maybe you were inside of FundWise in this training, right? Here's an easy example. For the last 45 minutes, I've been talking to you guys about how to generate leads even if you have no audience. You can take this and go share it with people. Value per second. And you're just sharing the conversations that you already had. So if you get stuck, a really easy thing that I've started to do is look at my calendar. Look at if you had meetings, phone calls, Zoom schedules like this. Look at those things. Think back on it. Figure out what you learned, what you tried, what you did as a result, and then you can share those things with other people. And that's a really simple way to come up with what to talk about. All your social interactions, right? All of your conversations, meetups you went to, anything like that. That's where the gold is because that's the easiest. You don't even have to think. You already did the thing. You're just going to talk about it. Tell stories. That's a loaded question right there. Here's another one that I just can't emphasize enough to you guys. Look for high demand and low supply. Let that sink in and think about it in the context of how you're trying to generate leads. I'll give you some examples. Those of you who have attempted to make posts that say something like, this is why transactional lending can help your business. Have you seen maybe 100 other people make that same post? And then my secondary question to you would be, have you ever seen anybody ask? Because if the answer to those is, can't remember how I asked the questions, but I'll just give the reality here. Everybody makes those posts and nobody asked, meaning that it's not high demand, low supply. It's actually low demand and high supply. There's plenty of it, but nobody's really asking for it. Now, on the flip side, when I'm talking to you guys, I know that one of the lowest supply things out there that's in very high demand is how to get more lending deals, right? Everybody wants more lending deals. There's really nobody out there that talks about how to do it. That is a high demand, low supply thing. So when you're talking about reaching out to wholesalers and doing these things, it takes a little bit of thinking and planning. But if you figure out the most high demand objective thing that is in the least supply and you do that, you will never have to worry about leads again. Now, it is not simple. I'm not saying it's simple, but I want you to understand that this is an objective you can have, is going for high demand, low supply things. Then, and this is the other kicker, you can differentiate through authenticity. What does that mean? It means that if I am talking about lending money to a wholesaler, right? And you guys are like, oh, Ryan's already telling all the wholesalers that he lends money. So what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to not be me, right? That's how you differentiate yourself, is through authenticity. I personally am a pretty blunt dude. I don't have a ton of time to talk to people on DMs all the time, whatever, right? So like those are some characteristics about me when I'm sharing this with other people. So, Nick, for example, might take way more time responding to people in the DMs, which I can't do. And Nick is a way nicer, more patient human being in his conversations, at least from what I've seen, than I am. So how can Nick win over business if maybe I'm already doing it? It's by doing it differently and being authentic, right? That's how he differentiates himself. That's why there can be a million different people that are successful in any business. Isn't necessarily because one is better. It's just that they're different, right? Everybody has a different spin. And that's why, especially for those of you that are listening right now that are new to FundWise, this is why I always encourage you guys to go talk with at least three other people in this community, because I'm a 26-year-old dude that lives in a truck and has no responsibilities. And most people can't relate to that, right? Now, it doesn't mean that I can't share things that are valuable to you guys, but in the back of your mind, you're like, well, Ryan can do it, but Ryan has no responsibilities and I have 3 kids and a job. Great. So now you can go talk to somebody with 3 kids and a job or 10 kids in a job that is even busier than you are, and you can relate to them, right? They differentiate themselves through authenticity. You can latch on to that and grab the value from there to help build yourself up. That is the value equation. Now, the last thing that I'll talk about is just the aggression. It's kind of a heavy word using the word aggression, but it's what I brought up at the beginning, right? Which is being aggressive with your output. Lead generation, whether you're building a lending business or any business, lead generation has a waterfall effect. In other words, it is exponential. Your lead generation is slow at the beginning, and then you get that first person, and then that first person starts bringing you 1 deal a month, and then the next month you get another person, and they bring you 1 deal a month, and you do that for 6 months, and at the end of 6 months, you have 6 people bringing you a deal a month, right? And it just goes up, 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 and it continues to go up. And then they bring you 2 deals a month, and then it doubles, right? But you have to be aggressive with your output early on. And this is why one of the questions I want you guys to just be able to ask yourselves is, have I done lead generation today? Now, I give you guys the metrics. I talk about the rule of 100. I break this down as the rule of 300, which is the hyper-aggressive version that I fully understand not everybody can do. But whether you're doing 300, 100, or 10, the question is, are you telling yourself that that you're not making progress, or are you measuring what you're doing and actually getting data behind that? Going back to the first comment we had from Russ, which is looking at data. If you don't do things, you will not have data. So if you haven't done lead generation today, then you're not going to make progress. That's just how it works. You have to go do. And when you go do, what does it do? Well, it gives you the opportunity to make money. It gives you the opportunity to learn. It gives you the opportunity to have things to talk about, which is how you can create content, right? It gives you all of those things just by one specific action. And that's why being aggressive with your output early on can set you up in the future. That's why some of you guys maybe that follow me on Instagram have seen me talking about how right now I just wake up and work all day, every day. And it's aggressive. And I'm doing that intentionally. I'm not going to do it forever. But the point is that I'm being very, very aggressive with this stuff right now because the waterfall effect later on will allow me to pull back on that if I so choose. The more aggressive you can be now, the more direction you're going to get, the quicker you're going to get it, right? And it's the same thing. I'll keep using Lance's 100 outreaches, for example. If Lance is doing 100 outreach a day and the average person is doing 10 outreach a day, or more realistically, 10 outreach every other day, but let's just say 10 outreach for a day, then Lance is going to get 10 times the amount of growth. And I don't know how many of you guys are into like stocks and finances and all that stuff, but if you compound 10 times the amount of growth over a long period of time, it's such a huge difference that they're not even on the same map, right? But you have to start compounding that growth now. So to close that out, if you do all of those things, your business will explode. I find it to be very, very valuable to start by establishing yourself in these communities, whether it's a Skool community, a Facebook community, or anywhere in between. Establishing yourself first, not only does it allow other people to get an idea of who you are and what you do, but probably more importantly, it allows you to get an idea of who you are and what you do, right? What is your identity? Do you want to be the guy that does a bunch of outreach, that posts a bunch of content, that hosts Zooms to teach other people, right? Maybe you enjoy talking to people more. Maybe you hate talking to people. Maybe you enjoy making videos. Maybe you find out you love writing. For those of you guys that were in the call, she didn't mention this. I don't know if she mentions it in the masterclass, but just so you guys know, Patrice, who now makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year as a writer, started writing 6 months ago. She learned about writing 6 months ago, and she now teaches other people how to do it. How did that happen? Well, I'm not going to give her whole life origin story of the last year, but how it happened was she was just trying a bunch of different things. She found something that stuck, and it wasn't even necessarily something she was good at. It just kind of fit in, you know? And so, but how did she do that? She tried like 10 different things. right? And then she found one and she dove in. And again, for those of you that don't follow or pay attention to Patrice, she'll be coming back, by the way, to share more with you guys. But Patrice and I are very similar. She works all day, every day. She does things for me at like 2 a.m. literally and sends them to me. And then she'll be up at 6 o'clock the next morning. She's a psycho. But she found that thing and then she's just going all out on her inputs, right? The same thing is true of anything you guys are trying, whether it's outreach, content, or anything in between. The same thing is true with businesses, right? It's all just putting in the inputs, getting your data, and then going from there. And not saying, I don't think this is working or I'm unsure, but actually getting real numbers to back it up and saying, this isn't working, right? Or this is working. Or maybe you didn't think it was working, but then you look at the data and it turns out it actually works pretty well. Or the other way around, right? It's a whole bunch of variables there. But if you look at everything we just talked about and you think with a slightly longer time horizon on how to have an impact on the people around you, how to establish yourself, how to become an actual player in the industry. There's like, there's 61 people on this call right now, right? 61 people on this call. 200, we just hit 250 people inside of FunWise. Amazing, right? Tiny, tiny number of people compared to, for example, the amount of wholesalers on Earth, right? Hundreds of thousands of people do that. There's 250 people inside of FunWise that are talking about what we're talking about right now. Don't ever allow yourself to convince yourself that you can't be an authority and establish yourself in this field. It's just not true. There's almost nobody doing this. You just have to start putting the inputs in now so that as more people start to realize, right, and jump in and learn this stuff, you're already established. And that's the coolest thing, right? That's what I love about Skool. I think that Skool will likely become a very heavy leading platform for this type of thing. Most people aren't here yet, which is cool because it means that FunWise can be something that's already here, already established, and we've got things figured out while other people are still just learning it. It's the same with anything, whether it's Skool, lead generation, a lending business in general, any of those things. It all just takes that heavy input early on. So I know that was I kind of just ranted there for like an hour, but hopefully that was really valuable. My main objective there was I just always want to give you guys a clear vision of what you can be doing, especially if you feel stuck. And so if you do feel stuck, right? If you don't feel like your outreach is getting anywhere, you feel stuck on content, anything like that, follow this structure. This is the best structure that I have seen for naturally building yourself into a lead generation machine. Is not just coming out of nowhere and people being like, who the heck is Nick Wilson? And why did he all of a sudden start posting these essays on our Facebook page? Like, why should we listen to him? And instead, and here's the cool thing that I think helped me a lot, share the journey along the way, because that is that database, right? That's the trackable. If you guys look back on my Facebook post, you'll see my database. You'll see me say, I'm starting a new business. I'm trying this. I lost money. I did this. I did that. And then when I start posting all these credibility posts like I do now, there's a whole bunch of data to back it up where people already know who I am. They already know what I do. They already know what I've been through. And so then when they get there, it's like they already know who you are, right? They already have those touch points. There's a rule. I'm going to botch the rule. 11, 4, 4, 3, 11, 4, 5, 11. Does anybody know the rule? Basically, the 11, the number 11 talks about when you're trying to get people to work with you, you need to have had 11 touch points with them on average. That's Google data. So that's based on like, a quadrillion data points. 11 touch points is the average number that somebody needs before they want to work with you. So if you're doing outreach to somebody, if you've posted 11 times and they've seen every single post that you've made, then 11 posts equals 11 touch points, right? If you've DM'd them 3 times and gotten on the phone with them and met them at a meetup and then been on 5 Zooms with them or whatever that number adds up to, but let's say it adds up to 11, then you've had your 11 touch points, right? You have to get in front of people consistently. And this is what I'm always talking about bringing your name up to the top of the equation, helping people know who you are and what you do. It's that 11th touch point, right? And I'm starting to get, FunWise is starting to become that for people. I'm seeing people join FunWise free that I told about it like 6 months ago or whatever when it started, close to 6 months ago. That I was telling people about it, but they were like, what is that thing? But now they've seen you guys talk about it. They've seen me talk about it every day. And eventually they get enough touch points where they're like, okay, this thing, I wasn't paying attention, but it seems like FunWise might actually have what I'm looking for, right? It's the same thing when you're talking about lending. It's the same thing with anything, really. It's just getting those touch points up. So, end rant there. Does anybody have thoughts, feedback? I'm going to read through the chat because I was not looking at all. Looks like Haley was, though. Nina asked what type of message we're reaching out with on LinkedIn, Haley.
I can look at that, Nina, and message you because I've been trying so many variations to see what will work. So I've been testing it out. I can post something too to see because we're still learning.
The shocker that the approach we're using is we're just trying stuff and then seeing what works, which is what I have been talking about all night, right? You guys will see I still do it on my Facebook all the time. I'll just try stuff out and see what works. And it doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. Tyler asked if Patrice has a Skool community. Yeah, she does. It's her free one. I
think David put it in the chat actually.
Okay, yeah, I think it's Verizon.
I put the link in.
Okay,
Perfect.
Cool. Anybody else?
I joined her Skool group that night after we had the meeting.
Love it. Yeah, she's awesome. She's awesome. And she'll be coming back more. There's a lot more that we have to talk about when it comes to writing. There we go, Mark. It's the 7-11-4 rule. Nice. Thank you for looking that up. Yeah. And that's, I mean, conceptually what that breaks down in another fashion, everything that I just talked about when it comes to getting reach and touching on things. There was a few questions that were on the post I made for people that might be watching this as a recording. I answered the how's LinkedIn going question. What are some quick ways to get to wholesalers? I think Hen, you posted that, and I know I saw you in here, even though I know you are heavily drinking coffee right now to stay awake. Do you want to pop up, Hen? If you're, oh yeah, you're still here. You want to unmute and ask that question?
Can you just repeat it once again? About what? Hi, guys.
Yeah, no rush.
Oh, I think he asked you to repeat the question, maybe.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You asked on my post earlier, what are some quick ways to get wholesalers? What did you mean by that? Or what were you looking for?
Well, basically, yeah, as you said at the beginning of this Zoom, wholesaler are just a bunch of people with random LLCs that are all over the place. And I was trying to do some Facebook groups of them and maybe to reach out, but nothing came up out of this, just full of noise. So I was wondering any other maybe platforms or trying to see some cash buyer leads from paid platforms or things like this. So how to really target those in the correct way.
Yeah, I mean it's everything we talked about at the beginning of this, right? And it's just doing that on repeat. So my objective for all of you guys, and by the way, when you guys do this, if you get positive data or negative data, as we talked about, you should be coming back into FunWise and sharing it with everybody else so that we can all learn together on this stuff, right? I only share my experiences. Hopefully you guys can do the same. But to answer your question, Hen, you should be picking a place where you think they're hanging out, and then you should be testing. And by the way, when we talk about like testing your outreach and generating leads, I'm talking about like weeks, if not months. We're not talking about like a day, right? Because there's a lot of variables you're testing. You want to go to a place where you think they are. Then the question becomes, okay, are you reaching out to the right people? That's step one. Are you saying the right thing? That's step two. Do you have the confidence, right, which we talk about all the time, to actually get deals from them? There's plenty of scenarios where people have lost deals only for the deal to then reach out to me. And it turns out that they just didn't have the confidence or the clarity on what the actual offer was, right? Which is why I've done the trainings, for example, on the difference between gap lending, bridge lending, private money loans, all that stuff, right? Because people don't understand that stuff. And then they say they can do something they can't. And then it becomes this whole fiasco. But if you're clear and you're talking to those people and you're repeating it and you're still not finding success, then that means you're in the wrong place. And then you can go repeat that exact same process somewhere else. And so by far, and this is the whole point of this tonight, by far the quickest way to find those people is find where they already are, right? Don't create a new ecosystem. Go into ecosystems where they already are. And then you can focus on just connecting with them instead of trying to basically make them appear out of thin air, which is essentially what you do if you're posting content, right? You're trying to recreate your own audience.
Cool. Thanks.
Of course. Darlene.
I don't have a question, just two comments. First is thank you. I know you have said it many times, but the fact that getting involved with Facebook, simply start by commenting on posts. You don't have to have the pressure of creating these amazing posts. Takes all that pressure away. So thank you. That's a big thing for me. And so that was my big takeaway today. But the other thing is I did have a conversation with someone who they have an app that helps you schedule Instagram posts where you can actually, it's Instagram stories mostly, but they are adding stuff, but you can actually comment, you can actually put links and hashtags, etc., and you can schedule them out. And so I had a great conversation with them there in Germany, and I said, hey, she gave me a lot of interesting information about Instagram and how to maximize your outreach, etc. And so anyway, I said to her, hey, would you be willing to come on my YouTube channel? And she agreed. So I'm going to hopefully have her on there. So we'll see how that
Congrats.
goes.
Congrats.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Another point I'll make just on data, because I love it so much. Again, something you guys may have noticed. So I told you guys a couple weeks ago, I paid a bunch of money and I'm now working with somebody to help me on social media. And one of those things was Instagram, right? And I've been posting a ton on Instagram. And I made that post, I think a week ago or something, about how much I was posting on Instagram. The point of that was for me to get data. It wasn't for the post to be good necessarily. It was for me to get data on what was working. And you'll see this week, I'm going to do something very different than what I did the previous 2 weeks, because I did my 2 weeks where I was gathering data, and now I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to gather some more data. And then I can look directly at that data and figure out what's working and what's not, right? And that's the super cool thing about taking action, is that you don't have to guess, right? I think they might be here. I'm unsure if they're going to be responding positively there. Who cares? If you go do it, then you can just say they didn't. Nobody watched my video, so it wasn't good, right? It's not, I think it's going to be good, or I think it's not. It's, yeah, no, it wasn't. And it's way, way easier when you can do that. So kind of random tangent, but yes, Darlene. And Darlene, you're already the master of leaving comments on stuff. That stuff can happen quicker than you think when it comes to establishing yourself. Like, if you go into a big Facebook group, people get paid a good chunk of money just to comment on stuff. Like, that's an actual job that people have, is commenting and engaging with people and answering questions. If you do it for free, you are immediately adding a ton of value to those people in that group, right? And people will notice that fast. After a week, easily, after a week, if you're commenting on a bunch of stuff and you're knowledgeable and helpful, especially, again, if you take that extra 5 seconds to make them valuable, what you're saying. Because again, especially on Skool, there's kind of a pandemic right now of people that just like comment just to comment, and it's not helpful, which is why I removed all the leaderboard stuff from FunWise. But if you're actually helpful and actually adding value, that stuff gets noticed very quickly. So try it out. It does work, but it's a great high leverage, low barrier to entry thing, I think.
Thanks again, Ryan. You always add so much value. So appreciated.
You are more than welcome. More than welcome. Mr. Dustin, what's up?
Hey Ryan, hey bud. Quick question. So I've been looking to acquire some property and been calling some wholesalers. And during the conversation, I've turned it into, hey, we also lend EMD and double close, and kind of got into that conversation with several of these people. And I've had several of them tell me that they don't really ever use EMD or double close ever. And anyhow, I'd ask some more questions on it. Didn't really get anywhere with them, but was able to leave information with them, contact information, or if they ever do come across it. So my question, I guess, is there a certain type or certain wholesalers that come across it more so than others, or what?
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of the age-old debate. So typically speaking, direct to seller wholesalers aren't going to use EMD. Typically speaking, on market is always going to have significantly higher EMD because there's going to be industry standard requirements. Well, not, I guess requirements, probably not the word there, but industry standard, which is typically around 1% for earnest money deposit. And that goes all the way up, no matter how big. That's typical. And then also on larger stuff, right? So like the stuff that Malcolm deals with, people aren't doing $10 EMDs typically on that stuff, right? $10 EMDs are off market, usually dilapidated homes, cash deals, stuff like that. So, my response, although it's always great to stay in touch with people, I'm just going to be my blunt self with you. The people who aren't using it now that you left your information, they're not really going to remember you, most likely, unless you're like friends with them or something. They're just not your customer, right? They're not the person you're trying to work with. But although you can do some things to try and target people, I have found that a more voluminous approach, hence content, is the easiest way to narrow those things down and get deals, because some off-market people do use EMD and some don't, right? And some on-market people maybe don't, and a lot do. So if you can go more of the volume approach and just go get more people, interested in having conversations, that's the best way to go about it. And then again, this is where the data comes in. Mold your conversations and outreach based on the conversations you have. So if you go into a Facebook group and you talk to 5 people and none of them use EMD, and then you say, Ryan, none of these people use EMD, I'm going to say, Dustin, you have no data. 5 people means nothing to me. But if you say 500 people had a conversation with you and not a single one uses EMD, I'm going to say, Dustin, you are in the wrong place, right? That I know. So if you can get a little bit of that volume, then you can be more clear on, hey, I did step 1, right? I picked a place where I thought my avatar hung out and they do not hang out there. So now I'm going to go somewhere else, right? And then you can make that pivot. That's how I would look at it.
Yeah, I was just curious if there was some certain person or any area that I was missing or whatever. So that's the reason I was wanting to say something.
Yeah, definitely not area. More on the concept of what they are wholesaling and then whether or not it's on or off market. That's the 2 biggest factors I've seen. Cool. Let's close it out with Malcolm. I know it's past East Coast bedtime. Muted.
Yep, there we go.
Yep.
Hey, I was going to say, I watched a podcast Patrice was on last night. And one big takeaway from that was for her to do copyright, she was at a point where she was trying to figure out where she could add value and she didn't know for sure. And someone asked her, hey, do you write? And she was like, yeah. And then she got off the phone and went on YouTube.
Yep.
And her mindset was, I don't know how to do it, but I will move heaven and earth to figure it out. And then, that ended up working and providing value. And she ended up charging, I think it was something like, she had one person, she charged like $300. And then she talked to someone else and she was like, well, 3,000. And they were like, okay. And then she's like, ooh, and then she had another customer and she was like, 6,000. And they were like, okay. And it kept notching up what she thought was possible, as she was going through it. The other thing I was going to comment on was last Thursday, I couldn't make the thing. I had my local meetup that I was hosting, and my speaker canceled at the last minute.
Nice.
We were having a guy, and he just, he couldn't make it. And so we were having a discussion about a deal, just a Q&A that I was talking to someone on the phone with, just sort of, hey, this is something interesting happened today. And that ended up being a whole topic for an hour. That ended up being the main discussion. And it wasn't about success. It was about all the things this person had done wrong. And everyone in the group was intrigued about what's the common mistakes that people make that blow up their deal. And so that ended up being the topic.
Right.
And it just ended up happening organically, So I think when you look at what can I post, sometimes obviously you can post your wins, but you can also post, like, quote unquote, your losses. Like when things don't work out, and say, hey, this is something I learned, don't do this because that didn't work out too well. And that'll be valuable to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. It all just comes down to doing stuff. And that's why that aggressive input just makes it so easy to have stuff to talk about. Never ending. It's like a lifetime of value and information. So I love that. Cool. Well, I think we covered a good bit tonight. Hopefully this was helpful to a lot of you guys. You guys know my objective is always just to try and give you a clear direction forward. Two things I'll close out with. The first thing I'm going to just do a training tomorrow on my EMD process. Front to back, I'll probably do like a demo transaction where I just go through everything in my process. So if you don't feel confident in that process, I'll see you guys tomorrow for that. My second question, most everybody's still here. Can you guys gosh, how do I do these votes? I never know. Okay, so right now we're doing our Tuesday trainings at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. Every other training that I do, like the Wednesday trainings, is always at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. Put a 1 in the chat if you prefer to change our Tuesday Zooms from 5 Pacific to 4 Pacific, and put a 0 in the chat. So everybody should be doing something. Put a 0 in the chat if you want it to stay the same, because this one's just a little bit later. I'm just going to save this chat. I'm not going to try and figure this out now, but I just want to see what you guys think. So 1 is move it an hour earlier. 0 is keep it the same. I'll let everybody vote, and then I'll just save the chat and check it out. And I'll let you guys know if it's a split decision, I'll make the decision on my own. That's usually what ends up happening. But I figured I would bring it up to you guys because democracy can be helpful in some cases. Haley and I both thought the Zoom today was at 4 o'clock because I've just gotten so used to doing the Wednesday stuff at 4 o'clock. So I was all ready for the Zoom. I literally was sitting at my computer ready. And then I realized I had an hour, and then I had to go back and go into my other work again. So it's kind of funny. Okay, cool. I'm going to assume that's enough people, and I'm going to download the chat. Cool. All right, guys, it's late. Thank you guys for being here. That everything that I'm going over right here and talking about is inside of phase 3 under the rule of 100 right here on where to start. So if you are somebody who is asking the question, where do I start? Then that is your answer. And if anybody has any other thoughts or feedback on that, let me know. Reach out to me. Send me a message. I'm going to be doing the full EMD lending process tomorrow for you guys. Please continue doing the work every day, no matter what it is, no matter if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 hours. I don't care. Your consistency will outdo everybody else because nobody is able to stick to something. And if you do, you will not fail. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you guys tomorrow night.
Thanks, Ryan. Great content, bro.
See you guys.
Bye.